A winter's grip. The greasy smell of frying onions clung to Maria's hair as she trudged home, the diner's fluorescent lights still imprinted on her retinas. Each gust of wind felt like a slap, a reminder of the unpaid heating bill tucked away in her apron pocket. She pictured Sophia and Isabella huddled together, sharing body heat like two small birds. The thought propelled her forward, her worn boots crunching on the already accumulating snow. Madre. Sophia's voice, bright and clear, sliced through the biting air as Maria reached the porch. The door swung open, revealing a cozy warmth that momentarily banished the winter's sting. Isabella stood just behind her sister, her dark eyes, usually alight with creative spark, were shadowed with worry. "Mommy, you're late," Sophia said, her tone a mixture of relief and concern. "We saved you some soup." "Just running a little behind, mi amor," Maria said, forcing a smile. She peeled off her thick coat, the worn fabric smelling faintly of coffee and desperation. "Did you two behave for Abuela Elena?" "Yes, Mama," Isabella replied softly, pointing to a stack of neatly folded laundry. "And we helped with the chores." Maria's heart swelled. Sophia, with her boundless energy, likely bounced around like a hummingbird, while Isabella, ever the quiet observer, had probably ensured every sock was perfectly matched. "You two are angels," she said, pulling them into a tight embrace. The small kitchen, usually a chaotic mess, was surprisingly tidy. A pot of steaming vegetable soup sat on the stove, its aroma a comforting promise of warmth. As they ate, Sophia chattered about her day at school, recounting a silly joke her friend had told and a particularly disastrous art project involving glitter and glue. Isabella, as always, listened intently, offering a thoughtful comment here and there. Maria listened, too, savoring the normalcy of the moment. For a little while, the weight of the unpaid bills, the looming threat of eviction, and the gnawing fear for her daughter's future seemed to recede. Later, as darkness deepened, the wind picked up, howling like a hungry wolf. The windows rattled in their frames, and the small house groaned under the assault. Maria checked the weather forecast on her ancient phone. "Blizzard warning," she announced, her voice tight. "Looks like we're in for a long night." Sophia, usually fearless, crept closer to Maria, her eyes wide. Isabella, ever practical, grabbed an extra blanket from the linen closet. "We should put towels under the doors, Mama," she suggested, to stop the draft. They worked together, sealing every crack and crevice against the encroaching cold. The small living room became their sanctuary, a haven of shared warmth and unspoken anxieties. Maria lit the old kerosene lamp, casting dancing shadows on the walls. The electricity was unreliable, a luxury they couldn't always afford. As the blizzard raged outside, they huddled together on the worn sofa, the thick blankets wrapped tightly around them. Maria read aloud from a tattered copy of The Little Prince, her voice a soothing balm against the storm's fury. Sophia rested her head on Maria's shoulder, while Isabella sketched furiously in her notebook, her charcoal pencil capturing the flickering lamplight and the worried lines on her mother's face. The wind howled louder, rattling the windows with renewed ferocity. A branch snapped outside, hitting the roof with a sickening thud. Maria's heart pounded against her ribs. She tried to project an aura of calm, but inside, fear coiled like a snake. This winter was relentless, a constant battle against the elements and the ever-present threat of poverty. She squeezed her daughters tighter, whispering a silent prayer to the Virgin Mary, asking for strength, for guidance, for a miracle. The statue in the town square, she always found comfort in its presence. Maybe tomorrow, if the storm subsided, she would walk there. Sleep didn't come easily. Maria lay awake long after Sophia and Isabella had drifted off, listening to the wind's mournful cry. She thought of her dreams, a small flower shop filled with color, a life free from worry, a future where her daughters could chase their dreams without the burden of hardship. But those dreams felt distant, as unattainable as the stars hidden behind the storm clouds. She closed her eyes, clinging to the faint hope that dawn would bring a respite, a moment of peace in this relentless winter's grip. Tightening the purse strings. The meager pile of bills lay on the kitchen table, illuminated by the lamp's glare, each shadow a jeering reminder of her distress. $37. Barely a dent in the electric bill, let alone the other looming expenses. A now familiar dread coiled in Maria's gut, a cold weight she carried everywhere. She briefly closed her eyes, offering a silent plea for resilience, for a beacon, even though miracles seemed a distant memory. "Mommy." Sophia's usually vibrant voice was uncharacteristically muted. Maria opened her eyes to find her daughters hovering in the doorway, their small faces hopeful yet hesitant. "Yes, my loves. The art supply shop is having a sale on charcoal," Isabella offered, her voice hushed. And Sophia found some really nice watercolor paper. Maria's heart plummeted. To indulge their passions, to foster Isabella's artistic bent and Sophia's lively imagination, was her constant wish. Instead, stark realities loomed. She mustered a smile, though her lips trembled slightly. "Oh, that sounds lovely, Mija. But you know how things stand with us." Sophia's face crumpled a little. "But mommy, my drawing pencils are all broken, and Isabella's paper is used up." Maria drew them close, enveloping them in a tight embrace. "I know, corazones. I know. But we must be so careful. Perhaps we can locate some scrap paper around here, and you can use crayons for now, Sophia." "All right." Sophia mumbled, her bottom lip protruding. Isabella, always more composed, squeezed Maria's hand. "It's okay, mommy. We understand." But Maria glimpsed the disappointment lurking in her daughter's eyes, a mirror of her own. Later, as the girls bent over their homework, Maria scrutinized the nearly bare refrigerator. A carton of milk clinging to its last drops, some limp greens, and a peanut butter jar nearing emptiness. She could stretch it, as always, but it wouldn't be enough. A quick search of the pantry revealed a can of beans and a scant handful of rice. Enough for a small portion of arroz con frijoles. A meager offering, but that was all there was. When dinner was ready, she heaped generous servings onto their plates, ensuring they had enough. She scraped only a tiny amount onto her own, claiming a large lunch. "Mommy, you're hardly eating," Sophia observed, her brow furrowed with concern. "I had a substantial meal at work, mi amor," Maria answered, forcing a smile. The fabricated response felt bitter. Isabella glanced at her, her eyes filled with comprehension. She didn't protest, but quietly pushed some of her rice and beans onto Maria's plate. Maria squeezed her hand, silently grateful. After dinner, as the girls readied themselves for bed, Maria remained at the table, the empty dishes a bleak reminder of their situation. The hushed stillness of their apartment weighed down on her, almost suffocating. She massaged her temples, trying to quell the nascent headache throbbing behind her eyes. She knew this precarity couldn't last. She needed to unearth a solution to escape this financial pitfall. But where could she turn? Who could she ask for aid? The prospect of admitting defeat, of exposing her vulnerability, felt insurmountable. She had always been the anchor, the provider, the steadfast presence. How could she allow her daughters to witness her collapse? Yet, as she gazed at the Virgin Mary statue positioned on the windowsill, bathed in the gentle glow from the street lamp, a nascent hope flickered within her. She had her faith. She had her daughters. And she would unearth a path forward. She had to. The cough. A brutal cough tore from Maria's lungs, a ragged, pre-dawn assault that left her gasping. Each exhale felt like inhaling ground glass. Her throat, scratchy and raw, resisted every swallow. Sitting up sent a wave of dizziness crashing over her, the thin blanket offering scant warmth. "Mama." Sophia's voice, thick with sleep, drifted from across their cramped room. "You all right?" Maria forced a weak smile. "Just a tickle, mi amor." "Sleep." But Sophia, already up, padded barefoot across the frigid planks. Beside her, Isabella stirred, her eyes still shadowed. Maria knew the bakery demanded her presence, and rent loomed. Yet, swinging her legs off the bed triggered another spasm of coughing, leaving her depleted. Sophia rushed to her side, a small hand a comforting weight on her back. "Mama, you're burning up." Isabella, now fully awake, touched Maria's brow, her expression clouded. "She's right, Mama. Feverish." Maria waved them off, a dull throb behind her eyes. "Fine, Nina's. Just weary." The lie turned to dust in her mouth. She tried to stand, but her legs betrayed her. Sophia and Isabella became her anchors, their young faces drawn with worry. The room swam, the familiar saints' posters on the wall melting into a watercolor blur. "Mama, please," Isabella begged, her voice unusually high. "You need to rest. The thought of lost wages clawed at her, each missed day a tightening of the belt, an approaching darkness as the heating bills stacked up. Driven by necessity, she fought the vertigo. "I have to work," she croaked, her voice gravelly. "Señor Rodriguez is counting on me." Sophia tugged at her sleeve. "But Mama, you can barely stand." Isabella darted to the table and returned with a cool compress, gently applying it to Maria's forehead. "Maybe Señor Rodriguez will understand. Maybe tomorrow." The coolness offered a fleeting respite, but tomorrow felt like a precipice. The fever would rage higher, the cough become more insistent. She looked at her daughters, their reflections mirroring her own anxieties. Sophia's lip trembled, and Isabella's eyes glistened. So young, so fragile. She had to remain their strength, even as she felt her own resolve fraying. Gathering a shallow breath, Maria tried once more, but her body simply refused. Her knees gave way, sending her collapsing back against the hard mattress, a symphony of aches in her spine. The cough surged again, a relentless, agonizing assault that stole her breath. Defeated, she succumbed, closing her eyes as tears pricked. "Okay," she managed, her voice a bare whisper. "Okay, I'll stay." Relief washed over Sophia and Isabella. Sophia hurried to the stove, her small hands struggling to coax a flame from the matches. "I'll make tea, Mama," she offered, her voice suddenly mature. Isabella knelt beside Maria, taking her hand, a small beacon of warmth and reassurance. "Rest, Mama. We'll manage." Maria squeezed back, her heart overflowing. Yet, beneath their love, a chilling anxiety coiled in her gut. How long could they survive? How soon would they be penniless? And what then? The Virgin Mary, perched outside their window, felt impossibly distant now. Desperate measures. The pantry groaned with emptiness, a stark void where provisions should have been. Maria rubbed her weary eyes, the frigid air of the kitchen a physical assault. Flour, vanished. Rice, a pathetic scattering at the bottom of the bag. Yesterday's thin broth had devoured the last of the beans. And the children's fever syrup, gone. Utterly depleted. "Mama." Sophia's face, fever-bright, peered around the door. "My head aches." Isabella trailed behind, clutching her belly. "Mine too." Maria summoned a smile, a brittle facade threatening to shatter. "Just a little tummy bug, my loves. We'll find something to help." But the words felt like grit on her tongue. She retreated to the bedroom, a relentless cough clawing at her chest, a stark reminder of her waning strength. She could delay no longer, hoping for a break in the weather. Her children's survival hinged on her, and she was their sole guardian. "Girls," she rasped, her voice strained. "We must go to town." Sophia's eyes widened in alarm. "Now? In this blizzard?" "I know, mi amor. But we desperately need medicine and supplies. We'll wrap up warmly, and we'll be vigilant." Maria's tone carried a resolve she struggled to embody. The relentless storm had raged for days, and the prospect terrified her. She unearthed their heaviest sweaters, woolly hats, and thick mittens. Sophia, ever the pragmatist, helped Isabella secure her scarf, ensuring it shielded her from the biting air. Maria wrestled with her own coat, her fingers numb with cold and fatigue. Each layer felt like a weight, a tangible manifestation of her responsibilities. "Mama, are you sure you feel all right?" Isabella's voice, a fragile whisper, betrayed her worry. Maria knelt, drawing her daughters into a close embrace. "I'm fine. We'll face this together. Let us pray to the Virgin for guidance and safety." She ushered them out into the savage wind. A blinding white maelstrom engulfed them, obliterating everything beyond arm's reach. The wind shrieked like a tormented spirit, tearing at their clothes and stealing their breath. Maria encircled each daughter with an arm, striving to shield them from the elements. The road had disappeared beneath a thick shroud of white. Maria navigated by instinct, guided by a fading memory of the familiar landscape. Each step was a labor, the snowdrifts reaching almost to their knees. The relentless cold gnawed through their boots, numbing their feet. "Mama, so cold," Sophia whimpered, her voice barely audible above the howling gale. "Just a little further, mi vida," Maria replied, her own teeth chattering uncontrollably. "Think of the steaming soup we'll have when we return." But even the idea of warmth and comfort seemed distant, unattainable. The blizzard intensified, the wind transforming the snow into a whirling dervish of ice. Maria could barely make out her hand in front of her, her eyes stinging, her face raw from the icy assault. She stumbled, nearly falling, eliciting a cry of alarm from Sophia. They struggled onward, heads lowered against the onslaught, three minuscule figures swallowed by the immensity of the storm. Maria stole a glance at the sky, a chaotic vortex of white, and a chilling wave of despair washed over her. Had she condemned them? Was she leading her children toward salvation, or toward a frozen grave? She tightened her grip on their tiny hands, her knuckles bone-white. She had to remain resolute. She had to persevere. Their very survival depended on it. The Virgin Mary. The snow was a relentless beast, each gust of wind whipping it into a frenzy. Maria's lungs burned with every ragged breath. Her boots, already soaked through, offered no purchase on the slick, deepening drifts. Sophia, usually a whirlwind of energy, trudged ahead, her small frame bent against the wind. Isabella, her face pale with worry, stayed close to Maria, her hand a small, reassuring weight in Maria's own. Just a little further, Mama, Isabella urged, her voice barely audible above the howling wind. Maria managed a weak smile. "Sí, mi amor. Just a little further." But the words felt hollow, a lie whispered to herself as much as to her daughters. Each step was an agony, a monumental effort against the encroaching weariness that threatened to swallow her whole. The fever raged within, turning her bones to lead. Sophia, ever the optimistic one, suddenly stopped, her eyes wide. "Mama. Look." She pointed towards the edge of the woods, where the swirling snow momentarily parted, revealing a form shrouded in white. Maria squinted, her vision blurred by the storm and the fever. As they drew closer, the shape resolved itself into a statue. The Virgin Mary, her serene face dusted with snow, her hands outstretched in a gesture of supplication. A small, flickering candle, miraculously sheltered from the wind, burned at her feet, casting a warm, golden glow on the pristine white marble. Hope, a fragile butterfly, fluttered in Maria's chest. She stumbled forward, drawn by the statue's silent promise of solace. The sight of the Virgin, untouched by the storm's fury, was a beacon in the overwhelming white. "Madre de Dios," Maria whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Help us." The effort of reaching the statue had drained the last of her strength. Her knees buckled, and she collapsed at the base of the statue, the cold seeping through her thin coat. The world began to spin, the swirling snow blurring into a dizzying kaleidoscope. Sophia and Isabella rushed to her side, their faces etched with panic. "Mama. Mama, wake up." Sophia cried, shaking her gently. Isabella, her voice trembling, began to pray. "Santa Maria, Madre de Dios, ruega por nosotros pecadores, ahora y en la hora de nuestra muerte. Amen." Maria felt their touch, heard their frantic voices, but they seemed distant, muffled, as if separated by a thick curtain. The fever was a roaring fire in her brain, consuming her thoughts, blurring the line between reality and dream. She saw faces in the swirling snow, faces of loved ones long gone, her abuela, her father, their smiles warm and welcoming. They beckoned her closer, promising rest, peace. No, she thought dimly. She couldn't. Not yet. She had to be strong. For Sophia. For Isabella. They needed her. But the pull of the darkness was strong, seductive. It whispered promises of escape from the pain, the worry, the endless struggle. The last thing Maria saw before darkness claimed her was the serene face of the Virgin Mary, her eyes filled with an unnervingly lifelike expression of profound sadness. The flickering candle flame danced wildly, casting long, dancing shadows that seemed to reach out and envelop her. A daughter's prayer. The church was empty, save for the two of them and the hushed whispers of the wind clawing at the stained glass windows. Sophia squeezed Isabella's hand, her own fingers slick with a nervous sweat. The statue of the Virgin Mary, bathed in the weak, filtered light, seemed to watch them with gentle, knowing eyes. Snow swirled outside, painting fleeting, ethereal patterns on the glass. "Are you ready?" Sophia whispered, her voice trembling slightly. Isabella nodded, her gaze fixed on the serene face of the statue. Usually, Isabella was the brave one, the steady anchor in their chaotic lives, but even she looked pale and fragile in the dim light. They knelt together, the cold stone biting through the thin fabric of their trousers. Sophia inhaled sharply, the scent of old wood and beeswax filling her nostrils. It was a comforting smell, a smell of faith and hope, but tonight, it felt inadequate against the crushing weight of their fear. They closed their eyes. Sophia began first, her words tumbling out in a rush, a desperate plea against the storm raging outside, both literally and figuratively. Please, Virgin Mary, Mother of God, please hear our prayer. Please make Mama better. She's the best mama in the whole world. She works so hard for us, and she never complains, even when she's tired. Please don't let her be sick. Please, please make her well again. A sob caught in her throat. She squeezed Isabella's hand tighter, drawing strength from her sister's silent presence. Isabella's prayer was quieter, more measured, but no less fervent. Dear Mother Mary, we know you see our suffering. Mama is sick, and we are scared. We pray for your healing touch, for your divine intervention. Please give her strength to fight this illness. Please watch over her and guide the doctors. We trust in your mercy and your love. Isabella pictured her mother's face, etched with exhaustion but always radiating love. She remembered the way her mother's hands felt, calloused from work but gentle when tucking them into bed. She prayed for those hands to hold them again, to smooth their hair, to chase away their nightmares. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows and their frames. For a moment, Sophia feared their prayers were being swallowed by the storm, lost in the fury of the elements. But then, something shifted. The wind seemed to soften, its frantic cries subsiding into a low, mournful hum. The light filtering through the stained glass seemed to grow warmer, bathing the statue in a soft, golden glow. A sense of peace descended upon the church, a tangible presence that settled over them like a comforting blanket. Sophia felt a lightness in her chest, a flickering ember of hope igniting within her. Isabella opened her eyes, her gaze still fixed on the statue. A single tear traced a path down her cheek, but her expression was one of quiet determination. I feel it, Sophia, she whispered. I feel something. Sophia opened her eyes too, and saw it. A faint, almost imperceptible smile seemed to play on the lips of the statue. The air crackled with a subtle energy, a sense of possibility hanging heavy in the air. They didn't know what it meant, this sudden shift, this unexpected peace. But in the heart of the storm, in the quiet sanctuary of the church, a fragile seed of hope had been planted. A daughter's prayer, whispered on the wind, had been heard. And perhaps, just perhaps, a miracle was on its way. Golden light. The biting wind howled, rattling the flimsy windows of the abandoned bus shelter. Maria coughed, a raw, painful sound that echoed in the small space. Sophia, her face etched with worry, pulled the threadbare blanket tighter around her mother's shoulders. Isabella, usually so stoic, traced patterns in the condensation on the window with a trembling finger, her gaze fixed on the snow-covered fields beyond. Mama, you're burning up, Sophia whispered, pressing her small hand against Maria's forehead. Maria managed a weak smile. Just a chill, mi corazón. It will pass. But she knew it was more than a chill. The fever had been building all day, leaving her weak and dizzy. Fear gnawed at her. She had to be strong for her girls. Isabella, without a word, reached into their meager bag and pulled out her sketchbook. She flipped through the pages until she found a drawing of the Virgin Mary statue they had passed earlier. It was a rough sketch, done quickly in charcoal, but it captured the statue's serene expression, the gentle curve of her hands. She held it out to her mother. Maybe if we pray. Isabella's voice was barely a whisper. Maria nodded, her eyes filled with a desperate hope. She reached for her daughter's hands, her grip weak but firm. Madre de Dios, she began, her voice hoarse. Please, protect us. As they prayed, a strange warmth began to fill the shelter. It wasn't the warmth of the meager fire they had managed to build, but something other. A soft, golden light emanated from the direction of the statue, bathing the small space in its glow. It intensified, swirling around Maria, Sophia, and Isabella, a comforting embrace that chased away the biting cold. Sophia gasped, pulling back slightly, but Maria held her hand tightly. Isabella stared, her eyes wide with awe. The light seemed to pulse with a gentle rhythm, growing stronger and brighter until it filled the entire bus shelter, pushing back the darkness of the storm. Then, as quickly as it began, the light subsided. Maria felt a surge of energy, a lightness she hadn't felt in weeks. The throbbing in her head vanished, the burning in her lungs eased. She took a deep breath, and for the first time in days, it didn't hurt. "Mama?" Sophia asked, her voice trembling. Are you better?" Maria touched her forehead. It was cool. She sat up straighter, her strength returning. I think so, Mihija. I feel different." Isabella pointed towards the statue. "Look." Beside the statue, nestled in the snow, was a large wicker basket. It was overflowing with supplies, loaves of fresh bread, apples and oranges gleaming in the soft light, jars of honey, and several small bottles filled with a dark, herbal-smelling liquid. On top of everything lay a pile of thick, woolen blankets, their colors vibrant against the stark white snow. Maria rose, her legs feeling stronger than they had in months. She walked towards the basket, her heart pounding in her chest. This was a miracle. She knelt beside it, tears streaming down her face. "Gracias, Madre de Dios," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "Gracias." Sophia and Isabella rushed to her side, their eyes wide with wonder. They reached out, touching the soft blankets, the smooth skin of the oranges. Hope, a fragile but persistent flame, flickered in their hearts, warming them from the inside out. The storm still raged outside, but within the small circle of their family, surrounded by the golden light of a miracle, they felt safe, protected, and, for the first time in a long time, filled with hope. Homeward bound. Maria bundled the final blankets, their well-worn wool carrying the subtle scent of damp earth and whispered supplications. The oppressive air, so heavy just hours prior, now yielded to a brightening sky. Azure glimpses pierced the dissipating cloud cover, like hopeful gazes breaking through. Even the wind had softened, its former shriek now a gentle murmur. "All right, chicas," she said, her voice still a touch gravelly, but regaining strength. "Time to head back." Sophia, ever the eager one, seized an end of a rolled blanket, her small face alight with enthusiasm. "I'll carry it, Mama." Isabella, quieter by nature, carefully secured the precious vial of medicine in her pocket. "Are you sure you're up to the walk, Mama?" A faint smile touched Maria's lips. "The Virgin Mary lent me some strength. And this medicine," she tapped her stomach, "is working miracles." Weakness lingered, a faint echo of the fever's grip, but the searing pain had receded. The thought of her own bed beckoned, a powerful motivator. Their journey back proved less arduous than anticipated. Though patches of snow persisted, the relentless descent had ceased. The sun, initially hesitant, gradually asserted itself, painting the landscape with elongated, shifting shadows across the pristine expanse. With each step, vitality flowed back into Maria's weary limbs, a palpable wave of solace washing over her. Back within their humble abode, Maria instructed the girls to change into dry clothes while she set water to boil. The little house, typically redolent with the fragrance of aromatic spices, felt stale and frigid. She promptly opened a window, inviting the invigorating air inside. A generous spoonful of honey sweetened her cup of herbal tea. The warmth chased away the last vestiges of the chill as she settled into her familiar armchair, observing Sophia and Isabella absorbed in tidying the small living space. The pallor that had haunted their faces the previous day was replaced by returning rosiness. A surge of gratitude welled within Maria, a potent blend of relief and boundless affection. Once she'd finished her tea, a fresh wave of energy propelled her to her feet. "Okay, Ms. Amores," she declared. "Let's make soup. Something warm and soothing for our tummies." Sophia clapped her hands with joy. "Chicken soup." Isabella concurred with a nod. "With lots of vegetables, Mama." Maria smiled. Chicken soup it was. She delved into their meager pantry, unearthing a few potatoes, carrots, and a lonely onion. Adding the last of their precious chicken broth, the savory scent of promise permeated the small dwelling, restoring a sense of normalcy. While the soup bubbled gently, her gaze drifted to the small statue of the Virgin Mary perched on the windowsill. A silent benediction crossed her lips. The three of them gathered around the weathered wooden table, each cradling a steaming bowl. The quiet was comforting, broken only by the gentle clinking of spoons and contented exhalations. "This is the best soup ever, Mama," Sophia announced, wiping her mouth with the back of her hand. Isabella, typically more reserved in her affections, simply nodded, her eyes sparkling with joy. Maria watched them, her heart overflowing with love. The storm had passed, leaving in its wake a renewed spirit of optimism. They were home, secure, and together. That was all that truly mattered. They would confront whatever trials lay ahead, united, their faith and unwavering love their greatest defense against the vagaries of the world. But for now, they would simply relish the warmth of the soup, the solace of their tiny sanctuary, and the pure delight of shared companionship. A community's hope. Even before the sun brushed the horizon, the buzz began. Old Man Hemmings, clearing his porch of overnight snow, caught snippets of Mrs. Gabble's animated chatter with the milkman, something about the Rodriguez family, the Virgin Mary, and an inexplicable occurrence. By mid-morning, the murmur had swelled into a palpable clamor, vibrating through Havenwood's cozy lanes. Maria was roused by persistent knocking. Sophia, already engrossed in her art at the kitchen table, glanced through a gap in the curtains. "Mama, it's everyone." And everyone appeared to mean half the town. Huddled in winter attire, they lined her porch, their expressions a blend of reverence and concern. Emboldened, Mrs. Gabble edged forward, a casserole dish clutched in her hands. "Maria, dear, we've heard about the blessing. We're here for you." Still bleary-eyed, Maria could only stammer, "Blessing." Sophia, ever practical, tugged on her mother's sleeve. "Mama, they brought food." Indeed, the porch was fast becoming a repository of generosity, covered dishes, fragrant loaves, stuffed grocery bags, even some clumsily wrapped presents. Mayor Thompson, unusually flustered, cleared his throat. "Maria, the town council, we've set up a trust to assist with expenses." Isabella, typically reserved, stood close, her hand a reassuring weight on Maria's arm. She registered the overwhelmed look in her mother's eyes, the fine lines of worry creasing her forehead. Isabella squeezed her hand. "It's all right, Mama. They want to help." The sheer volume of support was breathtaking. For years, Maria had persevered in solitude, her pride a bulwark against hardship. Now, that bulwark was yielding, replaced by a warmth she hadn't experienced in ages. Later, Mr. Peterson, proprietor of the local diner, arrived, looking sheepish as he scuffed his boots on the porch. "Maria, I know things have been tough. I understand what's transpired. I need someone dependable to handle the evening rush. Better wages, insurance. What do you say?" Tears prickled Maria's eyes. This was more than a job, it was a lifeline thrown at just the right moment. "Mr. Peterson, I don't know how to thank you." "Say yes," Sophia chirped, earning a gentle elbow from Isabella. Maria managed a watery smile. Yes. Yes, I accept." The following Sunday, it felt as though the entire community congregated at Our Lady of Sorrows. Father Michael's homily centered less on scripture and more on the potency of faith and the strength of community. He spoke of Maria's steadfast devotion, the inexplicable event at the statue, and the significance of aiding those in need. Following the service, Maria, Sophia, and Isabella strolled toward the statue. The snow had receded, revealing the Virgin Mary, her countenance serene and beatific. People drifted around, murmuring prayers, leaving floral tributes at her feet. Sophia reached out and touched the statue's base. "Mama, do you think she can hear us?" "I know she can," Maria responded, her voice resonating with newfound conviction. "She heard us that night, didn't she?" Isabella retrieved her sketchbook and began to draw. She captured the statue, the surrounding trees, the faces of the people who had come to offer their respects. She immortalized the budding hope, the palpable sense of faith permeating the atmosphere. As dusk painted the town in long, fading hues, Maria gazed at her daughters. Sophia, bubbling with enthusiasm, her eyes sparkling with wonder. Isabella, her brow furrowed in concentration, her hand dancing across the page. They were secure. They were cherished. They were part of something larger than themselves. The miracle at the statue hadn't merely altered their circumstances, it had ignited the heart of their community. It had sown hope where despair had taken root, fostered faith where doubt had lingered, and forged a sense of belonging to a family who were now, unequivocally, united. And Maria knew, beyond any shadow of uncertainty, That whatever challenges the future held, they would confront them, together.